Well, looks like it's time for some new struts. Hey, what's up YouTube? Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front struts on a 2018 Honda Pilot. This is an Elite all-wheel drive. Now you can see this strut's been leaking and it's definitely time to change it out. We're going to go with a KYB this time, and I did not get the quick strut, so we're going to have to disassemble this spring from this strut once we get it out. But it shouldn't be too hard. Let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so first we need to take off this 12mm bolt that holds the brake line to the strut. And then we can just pull this little ABS line out of the mount on the strut here. And on the other side, we just have this little plastic clip that holds this ABS wire in place. Now we're also going to take out this bolt right here that holds the ABS sensor in the hub here. It's a 10mm socket. All right, now I'm going to take off the sway bar end link nut. This is a 17mm nut. A lot of times they'll just spin or get stuck. I'm going to see if we can zip it off with the Milwaukee Impact. All right, well, we got lucky and it came right off. Just wanted to also point out that the end of this is a hex shape. So you can grab a 6mm Allen or hex key. That might help hold this or keep this from spinning while you loosen that nut. So that's another option. You know, if you live in a really rusty area, you might just want to plan ahead and get some replacement sway bar end links as well, just knowing that you may have to cut these off. All right, now we're going to disconnect this tie rod end here from the knuckle. First, we're just going to pull out the old cotter pin. And we're going to break this nut loose. That's a 17mm. Now I do have a tie rod separator tool, but the Tanya Harding works pretty well. You just give it a few whacks right here. You're just wanting to hit this part, and that will break the taper and pop this out. That got it. All right, now we need to take off the caliper. I'm going to turn it this way a little bit, but I'm also going to push these caliper pistons back in just a little bit so that it will be easier to get that back on. All right, now I'm going to take off these two caliper bracket bolts. Those are a 19mm socket. Just make sure you hold that caliper with one hand so it doesn't drop to the ground as you take these bolts out. All right, I'm going to hook this over here on this brake line bracket so that it's not putting any stress on that brake hose. Now the brake hose is not quite long enough to set this on the ground, but I guess you could always put a little table or a stool right here and set the caliper on it too. I'm also going to take off the rotor so we've just got more room to see what's going on, a little bit more room to work. These have the notorious Honda screws, so if you've got one of these impact screwdrivers, that really helps. You just put it in there, whack the back of that with your Tanya Harding. I got it. I recently did the brakes on this. That's why you see all this anti-seize, and that's why the rotor came off easily. Sometimes you need to give that a whack with the Rotor Remover 9000 as well. But we're ready to go here. Now, next thing I'm going to do is take off this axle nut here so that the axle is loose, and we're going to push that through the hub. Now, you see how this axle nut is staked down to prevent it from backing off? That staking is really light, but just to show you what you can do if you'd like, is you can just get a little mini pry bar or screwdriver in there. Now it's nice and smooth. That should come right off. I don't usually do that. I'm just showing you what you can do. I usually just zip these off with the impact, and it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. By the way, the size on this is a 36mm. All right, hopefully this axle is not stuck and we can push it right through. Maybe not super easily. Let's see if we can hit it with a mallet. All right, let me grab something so we can give that a tap and see if we can break that loose. Now, don't go wailing on this with a sledge. You can mushroom that pretty bad. I'm just going to use this brass drift from Mayhew and see if I can push that in. All right, the axle's not really wanting to move. Let's hit it with some PB Blaster and see if that will make a difference. Let that soak in for a minute. There we go. All right, now we need to separate the lower ball joint here from the knuckle. We just need to pull out this little cotter pin. It's like a little special style from Honda and Acura. Just pull off the side like that. and it slides right out. You see it's kind of a unique shape, unique design. All right, now we need to grab a box end wrench here. This is a 19 millimeter, and take off this lower ball joint nut. Now for the next part, in order to separate this, I'm actually going to move this caliper. I'm going to move it up above, hang it up on the coil spring temporarily so I have more room, because I'm going to hook onto this lower control arm with this thing right here. This is a really nice tool, and I highly recommend you get this if you don't have one. The way it works, it just hooks onto that lower control arm, and then you can put a pry bar through that. So now what I'm going to do is push down on the pry bar while I strike right here on the knuckle, this little part right here, and that's going to help us break the taper of that ball joint and hopefully drop this out. You don't need to take the nut all the way off. It's kind of a good thing to leave it on, that way you can gauge when it drops down. But hopefully this will just take a few hits right here. There we go. Then we can just take that nut the rest of the way off. All right, now I'm going to push down on the pry bar and separate that. Luckily, this lower control arm does have these nice big openings, so you could put a pry bar through there. If you don't have this tool, there's just so many other jobs where there's not a good place to put a pry bar, so this does really come in handy. All right, now I'm going to pull this caliper back off of that spring and tuck it away over here where we had it. Now we can loosen and remove this lower pinch bolt here. That's a 17 millimeter. Now, I don't know if you saw it, but the knuckle just dropped from the strut as well, so it's not even stuck on there. Probably from all the oil leaking out of the strut over the years. But let's set that aside. You can see the knuckles just already falling off of the strut, so that's making this easy, the fact that at least it's not stuck. I could probably force this, push in on the axle and drop this all the way off, but I don't want to do that because there are 3 mounting nuts up above and I don't want to bend those. So we're going to take those off, and that will allow me to move this, wiggle the hub the rest of the way off, or the knuckle the rest of the way off, and then we should be able to drop the strut down as well. All right, up here at the top we have this plastic cover. Just need to pry that off. And we also have this right here, this little flap. It's just a little access panel or door, and that gives us access to all 3 of these nuts that hold the strut in. Now it's a 14 millimeter socket to take off these nuts. I am going to use the Koken nut grip deep socket here. The nut grip here just holds on to that nut once it's loose, and it really just prevents you from dropping those underneath here and then making the job a bigger job. Saves you a little bit of time. Just loosen and remove all 3. There it is. Now, normally for this last one, I would have my hand underneath holding onto that strut, but it looks like it's resting on the axle still right now, so hopefully it's not going to fall. There we go. All right, we should be able just to drop this down now a little bit. There it is. Okay, that wasn't pretty, but we got it. Let's just pop that strut out. Just came right out for us. Didn't even need to use a hammer. So now we're ready to take this over to the workbench and take off that spring and put on the new strut. All right, well, here's our new KYB strut. I'm just going to cut this strap here real quick. And look at it go. Fully extended. Now the part number on this, 3347507. This is for the driver's side. I believe it's 7506 for the passenger side. Now I'm doing, of course, just the strut, not the quick strut assembly. If you are uncomfortable with this next part, just skip ahead and buy the quick struts. That's totally fine. I totally get it. Now I've got a couple of these strut spring compressor tools or sets. This one here, and then this one I think is from Harbor Freight. Sometimes when I do this, depending on how nervous I am or how tight the spring is, I might use more than 2. I might even put a couple of these on front and back as well, just to make sure it's extra safe and that it's not going to break or fly off, or one of these screws isn't going to break. Just remember when you do this, wear eye protection, be really safe. These springs are under a lot of pressure and you can definitely get hurt. So just a little bit of a heads up or warning, if you're not comfortable doing this, you can just take off the old one, put in a new one with the spring already installed. Now I've got the old strut here mounted just in a vise, just kind of loosely, just to hold it steady while we compress this spring and take it off. Again, if you're uncomfortable using the strut spring compressor, I completely understand. You might just want to go with the quick strut route It's just that I've not had really good luck with the quick struts lately. A lot of the quality of some of the other components aren't really all that great, and a lot of times the bolts or something won't line up. So I am going to reuse this spring and of course all the rubber bumpers and hardware on this, but I do need to take this off, of course, before I can put that onto the new KYB strut. Honda does something a little bit different. Up here at the top, if we pull off this rubber cap, you see there's the nut that we need to get on, but unfortunately it's down there quite a way. So you can't use a box end wrench and hold this steady with an Allen wrench. So what Honda does is they sell you a special tool. It's a little through socket with an offset for a 3/8 adapter so that you can tighten or loosen that. Fortunately, I do have something that will work. Right here, this is a 17mm pass-through specialty socket from Tone. Has a little retainer ring here around the perimeter, and it's nice and open in the middle. So what I'm going to do is combine this with a ratcheting wrench, also from Tone. This is the 17mm. It's got just enough offset, so if I stack the two together, that now gives me a deep enough access with a through design so I can put the hex key through there. Let's grab a number 6 hex key here, and let's take this up to the top of the shock. Now obviously I'm not loosening this yet. I don't have it compressed, but you can see right there, we are easily on that nut, and looks like I can still get the hex key through there. So let's go ahead and get the strut spring compressor set up on this, and we'll compress that, undo the top, and put in the new one. Just remember to wear some safety glasses if you're going to do this. And again, if you're not comfortable with this part, that's fine. Just do the quick struts, or you can maybe take this to a shop and have them change this out for you. Now these are supposed to be safety pins, but they're not going past the coil, so we're going to have to do it without them. So now I can use my 6mm Allen key here and put that through and hold that steady while I break this nut loose. Oh boy, that is on there good. Oh, we stripped it. We stripped it. So we need to go to plan B. Let's see if we get lucky with the 17 here. See if we can zip that off. All right, we got it. Perfect. All right, we can take off that top bumper. Now, it felt like I was still maybe not all the way tightened down on these spring compressors, so I'm gonna have to give them another snug. All right, now I'm gonna lift off the spring with a little rubber boot or bellows, and I'm gonna carefully set that down. Look at that strut. There's nothing there. Push it down, nothing happens. Everything leaked out, so this thing was probably bouncing all over the road. Look at that. Even if I pull it up, it's dropping almost on its own. So that is definitely no good. All right, and then we're gonna set the new one in here, just like we had the old one. Snug that down, take off the new nut and set that over here. You see this piece right here came off with the old strut. I just took it off because our new strut has one. And we're gonna carefully put this over the new strut, just the way we had it. All right, there's a little tab that will line up. Just have to rotate that. All right, and then we can put this top piece on. It's got our little rubber bumper there too. Just have to pull that back, line it up, and push it down. Okay, we're not quite there. Now I'm gonna put another compressor on this side, see if I can help that, squeeze it down a little bit more. See if we can get one more on here. I know this seems silly and it's probably overkill, but I think it makes it a little bit safer, you know, if you're using 4 instead of just 2. All right, just a note, the nut from KYB is a 19. We're just gonna get this snug down right now. I just have this on the lowest setting just to get it snug. All right, now luckily I still have the same tool set up in 19mm, so I'm gonna use that, but I am realizing now that I'm not gonna be able to actually torque this to the spec with a torque wrench. We're just gonna have to go with what we got for right now. I think it's 48 foot-pounds for this. All right, that felt about right. Really close to the 48 foot-pounds that that's supposed to be. All right, now we're just gonna slowly back these off one at a time, and we should be good to put this back on the vehicle. This looks like it's ready to go back on. I just might have to adjust that a little bit to get it lined up. But let's take this over to the car now and see if we can get that started up underneath and get that into our knuckle or hub and start putting it back together. Now, just a quick note on the top. This is not a perfect symmetrical shape. There's a little teeny arrow right here on this stud right there, and that's the one that goes facing the front. Also, if you take note at the bottom of the strut, on the back, you see this little part right here that's sticking down? Now, if you look at the knuckle right here, that little seam, that little joint is where that part needs to go when we put that on. Now, I'm gonna try to put the strut in first. This is kind of heavy if I do the two together. I think I can just put the strut up first and get those nuts loosely started, and then I'll still be able to rock this or move this around enough to put the hub or knuckle on and then get that pinch bolt in. So let's line it up with the holes up above and put it through and see if I can get the nuts started from above while I do that. It'd be nice if you had somebody helping you, but if you're doing this on your own like I am, just line it up, push it up through like that. Now you just kind of got to hold it up and then go up above and get that started. That's definitely not going to be easy. Okay, I got one started. That is not easy to do by yourself. I ended up going with the pry bar method, holding this up with one hand while I got those nuts started up above. Using a pry bar seemed to do the trick, and those are all just started right now. I don't have them tightened yet. Now I'm gonna brush just a little bit of anti-seize. It says to use moly grease, but I think anti-seize will work pretty well. Mostly on the face here, and you know, you can brush the splines a little bit too. You don't need to get too carried away or use too much, but that would hopefully prevent that from getting stuck, should we have to take that off again. Now I just kind of wiped this out. It was pretty dirty, but should slide on there okay. Let's just try to maybe do the axle and the strut at the same time. See if I can get that in there and get it started. There we go. And now I'm just gonna try to slide this back up onto the new strut. There it is right there. Oh man, that just wants to fall right back down. Now I'm going to push the control arm down so I can just rest this on the ball joint, and that's going to help me get this lined up and get that pinch bolt started. All right, that's going to help us now. All right, you see why I did that? I just put this back on the ball joint so that the control arm is going to help us push it up, and you can see that it pushed it all the way up and it lined up with that joint in the back. Now I can get this pinch bolt in and snug that up. Just push up on it while you do it, make sure it's all the way seated. All right, and then we can torque this pinch bolt to 58 foot-pounds. All right, and then we can grab the sway bar end link and put that in and get that nut started. Now the torque spec on this is 58 foot-pounds. All right, now we can put in the tie rod here. And then we're gonna torque this to 44 foot-pounds. And then we need to put in a new cotter pin. All right, and then we can put on the lower ball joint nut here. Now the torque spec on this says 58 to 65 foot-pounds, but of course we are going to need to line up that hole. So what we're going to do is I'm going to torque it to 58 first, and then if we need to go a little bit farther past to line that up, we can. Just don't go backwards. You always want to go a little bit tighter to line that up. All right, there's 58. Remember, this is that special cotter pin. Okay, we need to go a little bit more. We're lined up, so just push that on until it clicks into place. And you see that locks it. Now I'm just gonna thread the axle nut on and get that snug, but I'm not gonna torque that until we have the brakes back on. All right, now we can put our brake rotor back on. Now I am gonna put the rotor screw back in. I know a lot of people don't, but I like to have it on there. Just kind of holds the rotor nice and snug. You know, the lug nuts will hold this rotor tight, but I just usually put them back on as long as they're not stripped or anything. All right, then we can grab our brake caliper and drop that back down. Take the hook off and just carefully line that up like so. And we'll just get these two bolts started. All right, the torque spec on these is 101 foot-pounds. All right, now I'm gonna torque this to 242 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna set this up, put a nice heavy-duty pry bar here in between the studs to hold this and keep that from turning while we do this. So I've got this set to 242. Again, this is a 36 millimeter. All right. Now I'm gonna spin this around. All right, now I'm just gonna use a punch and stake the flange of this nut down into that little keyway. That looks good, that's not going anywhere. All right, and then we can put our ABS sensor back in the hub or the knuckle here. Tighten the little 10 millimeter bolt that holds it in place. And then we can clip the ABS wire into this little mounting hole right here, this little tab, like that. And you can see right here, the ABS wire also has this little rubber mount that slides into this little tab on the body of the strut. Just push that in and that should hold it in place. And then the brake line, remember, that's just held in place by one 12 millimeter bolt. All right, now we can torque these upper strut nuts to 55 foot-pounds. Just gonna get them snug first. And then we can put these little plastic covers back on. There we go. Just realized I forgot to put the little rubber cap back on the shock, but luckily you can get to that from this same little access port. And you're done. Now before you head out, it's very important that you do step on the brake pedal a few times to push the caliper pistons back out, pressing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. Now when you do this, don't press the pedal all the way to the floor. That can damage the seals in your master cylinder. Just press it down about halfway several times until it feels firm, and you should be good to go. Now I should also recommend that you do get an alignment, because it is a possibility that the ride height changed after changing these out. I would also recommend verifying these torque specs that I'm putting in the video to your manual, just to make sure that you get the right torque spec for your vehicle. Now I might have missed a step or two, but I think we got the general idea here. Hopefully this video will help you get this job done if you're going to attempt to do this yourself. Now another thing, the Honda manual recommends replacing all of the hardware, right down to all of the nuts at the top of the strut, including the axle nut, even the sway bar end link nut. Now if your hardware is in bad shape, then I definitely would recommend doing that. Now in our case, we were not able to go buy that hardware. The dealer's closed today, so we just went with what we had, but just wanted to give you that heads up in case you did want to replace all of that hardware, to go ahead and order that when you order the struts as well. I hope you like this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. Now, of course, I'll get a link in the description to the KYB struts that I used, along with some of the other parts and tools used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.